No fun, all seriousness.
No fun podcast.
It's good to see you again. And that Tokyo background, how we doing, my man?
My man, we are doing good. Something I want to talk about today is I am in the throes of a flare up, so I'm doing great. I'm also in pain currently, and we'll get into it, the meaning of suffering and everything. Just a lighthearted episode.
It's where we're going to
Other than
start. The
that,
meaning of suffering.
yeah, but it's a little rainy morning, my first rainy autumn morning, which I love. I went to the convenience store, got my Family Mart coffee, and
Beautiful.
it just made me happy. Just being in there. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do like Japan. It is awesome. And I'm literally reminded every day, like when I do that little morning coffee run, that is like what I love about Japan. It's just like, just joy in the little things. The guys just cheerful in there, and it's beautiful. A rainy morning. It's lovely.
It is beautiful. So I want to tell you about a couple things, and then I know we want to talk about the darkness and the suffering and some Jung and some incredible quotes we're going to bring in here. But I want to
Yes.
talk about two things. One thing you are familiar with, one thing you are less familiar with.
Oh boy.
The first thing I want to talk about is someone else's idea. Something we do great here on the Dare to Dream podcast is just steal ideas from other people. It's originally, I heard it on Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson, the GOAT. And it's
Yes.
this idea of the lonely chapter. And the lonely chapter is something that many people experience. You might be experiencing it right now if you're listening and not have the language to describe it, but it's the period between it happens to you when you're growing and when you're into personal growth and trying to work on your life. And it's the period between you finding your new community, your tribe, and the people who are going to really vibe with where you're going. That period between now and then, where you might feel less comfortable in your current situation around your current friends. And this isn't any sort of advice to cut out your current friends, but as you grow and change, you
I
might
would
not
recommend it,
be having the
especially if their
same
names are
conversations.
Greg.
Yes, I mean, I've tried to cut you out so many times. At this point, I've just given up.
I'm
But
like a dead cockroach that just won't die.
this lonely period is when the things you used to do, the conversations you used to have, they just don't resonate and hit in the same way. You're not as interested in just reflecting on the good old days because you're growing and changing and evolving. And it's called the lonely chapter because it's lonely. You haven't quite became the person who's going to fit in with that new tribe of people who are doing big things, who are really pushing themselves, who are maybe operating at the level you want to get to, but you're not quite there yet. And so you have this period where you're just by yourself. And it can feel strange, wrong. You can start to ask, am I doing the right thing? Am I going down the wrong path? And Chris Williamson just talked about it and said, no, like that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Sometimes you need to go monk mode. You need to go into the cocoon to emerge from the other side, a beautiful butterfly. So I wanted to share that with you. I feel like you've been in your own lonely chapter, isolated in Japan, going
Hmm.
through it. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot to say about that. First thing that comes to mind is that you might not be physically isolated for you to feel lonely. You could be still surrounded by people in the same environment you've been in. You're doing the same stuff, going to parties, whatever it is, meeting up with friends, but you just feel like distant now and something's changing and you want something else. And I think as Chris Williamson, I didn't actually listen to that one. Was that the new 2.75 episode?
No, this is from a long time ago. It just got brought up recently in
Oh,
my life.
nice. It's like when we are doing anything that challenges ourselves, that is different than what we are used to, that is growing, it's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel like we're wandering in this valley of mystery and unknown and like what are we doing here, and this can't be the right thing because it feels so different and just doesn't feel comfortable. That's a big one. The discomfort, and that does mean you're doing the right thing. And from personal experience, I've been in that place for like 8 years since graduating, and having this ember of a dream start smoldering in my heart and soul. It's been constant wondering and wondering and wandering and trying to just put the pieces together. And they have. Now I'm at a place where it feels like, wow, I actually feel like I am in control of my destiny. And it has taken years of being quite lonely in Japan. Even that's been incredible. I would say just the loneliest period has been since moving to Tokyo in the last 6 months, which
Yeah.
is which was the ultimate dream in the beginning. I thought that Tokyo was the place for me, and I just wanted to experience that big city life. And now I'm here, and it's been the hardest, most transformative chapter of my life, being here on my own. And there's nobody to. I have one friend literally here. So I hit her up on the weekends, and we do hang out like maybe once a week. But like I'm like this weekend, I'm like, what am I gonna do this weekend? Probably just keep working on my stuff, because like that's what makes me happy. I'm like working on my magazine right now, and um, there's that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. But there's no real distractions to make you. You could do what you want to do, but it's also like you don't have that kind of crutch to, like, I don't have friends hit me up to make me feel like me again. It's either me just kind of working in the darkness on my stuff because that's what makes me happy and that's where I think I want to go, or it's me just kind of spiraling and being like, what am I doing here? I do feel alone. So it's a difficult place, but it's where we become who we're meant to be.
Right. And you actually spoke to the piece that I wanted to add to it. So the lonely chapter was that idea I heard from Chris Williamson. And then I wrote about this in my newsletter recently, what I'm calling the quiet chapter, which is in conjunction with the lonely chapter when you decide that you want to change how you show up in the world or what you do for work. And so for us, that was starting the podcast 4 years ago. Today, I think this is going
Wow,
to be
four
episode
years.
188. And the quiet chapter is the period before you get noticed. It's the period where you are toiling in obscurity, where you're creating content, you're writing articles, you're making videos, you're recording podcasts, and you're pumping it out into the world. But it's going into the void, it's going into darkness, and no one's paying attention, which is actually a great thing because you're learning the skills. Maybe you're making some embarrassing content. I know I certainly did at the beginning and still do. And it's this period of proving to yourself. You're not proving to anyone else yet. You're proving to yourself that like this is what you want to do. This is who you want to be. This is how you want to show up. And it's quiet and it's really hard to keep going and stay consistent and keep creating when you ship the work and you have no idea if anyone ever sees it. And then you start to get the occasional text or email saying, "Wow, really loved this piece," or "I read this and it was amazing." And the little pieces start to come together, and eventually you come out the other side. And I feel like I'm just starting to emerge from the other side of feeling like I've done enough reps to say, okay, this is who I am. I am a coach. I am a podcast host. I am a writer. I am a speaker. And bringing all those things together. And now it feels like I'm ready for the next chapter of being seen and being heard. But you do have to be lonely, be in the dark, and just put the reps in.
For sure. And that is what I've battled with fundamentally over the years, because I am a writer and I've written like 615 articles, but I've always wondered, I'm like, what is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Should I be on other platforms? I've just stuck to Medium and my website.
You should have gone to
And
Newsbreak. Huge
yeah,
missed opportunity there.
I actually tried. I did for a sec, but I've always come back to no, like that is not what feels good to me, what feels true. And it's going to feel like you're doing something wrong. Like I said before, I felt that way the whole time. I'm like, why is everybody else getting thousands of likes or claps, whatever, on Medium? And like, I'm not. what am I doing wrong? And then I always just come back to you. You just see the highlights of other people, and then you just judge yourself for like the worst thing that you're doing. And I do. I mean, I have every once in a while a bigger article or something, but that's not the point. The point is who you're becoming through doing the work, through shipping it, through creating, and to tie that into the suffering piece, which we'll get to later. But just like this week, I've been writing poetry lately, been writing travel stories and stuff. But I had a bad flare up the first day back in Japan, or first day back in the gym in Japan. Just doing squats, back flared up. Fuck, god damn it. Okay, and mind almost spiraled, but caught myself. I'm like, no, like this is an opportunity. This challenge is this is where you change. This is where you heal. Not when things are going perfectly, but when things go bad. And Jordan Peterson on Lex Friedman, I think last week, awesome episode, Vintage JP. He says seeing challenges as opportunities is the beginning of wisdom, and that just hit me at the perfect time because this is what my mind body coach Jim Prusak, the pain PT, shout out Jim, says on YouTube. He's like, this is where you heal. It's when you have the flares because they're going to happen inevitably. They're part of the journey. That is where you change. That is where you retrain your brain to realize that no, you are safe. Sitting in this chair recording this podcast, I was going to use a foam roller as like a lumbar support for my back. Like
You
maybe
said no.
just this once, just I want to be comfortable for the podcast. That's exactly what perpetuates the pain. Me sitting here through this, and it's not that bad. It tells my brain that no, I'm fine. I don't need to treat it because there's nothing there. There's nothing wrong. So I'm in the gym. It goes out. I'm just like, no, I'm not going to go down the spiral. Threw on an audio from Jim Prusak, and he just helped me through it. I finished the workout. I didn't leave like I would have in the past and just phoned it in. I've worked out every day this week just through the pain. We were laughing about this, just me just crawling on the floor from machine to machine. But when I'm in there, I actually learned yesterday, listening to Gabor Mate on Theo Von, that endorphins are naturally healing to us. They heal our pain, they heal emotions, they heal everything. And they're like, they give us what drugs give us, they give us alcohol gives us, what any sort of addiction. And you get endorphins from working out. And that's why I'm like, oh man, of course, that's why I could still run. I could still go to the gym when I'm and just work through the pain. But then I'm hobbling around and I can't sit in a chair like when I'm going through this. And, I'm feeling better today than I did yesterday. So seeing that challenge as an opportunity. And why I brought that all up was the point of suffering. And I don't really know why I brought that up to begin with. I kind of forgot after that train of thought, but I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Well,
Maybe
I'm
you
really
know what it
glad you brought
was.
it up because Gabor Mate has come up. That name has come up so many times recently. Just on an episode I
Legend.
recorded with Lori that is not out yet. With like I've heard that name like 10 times in the past 3 weeks. And whenever that happens
It's a
in my
great
life,
name.
it's an indication, a sign to pay attention. So I
Yeah.
need to look him up. The fact that he went on Theo
You don't
Von
know
is
who that is?
amazing. No, I've only
Oh,
heard
wow.
that he has very awesome views on trauma.
Exactly. Dude, I feel like the whole world is growing with me as I'm learning about mind body stuff because he's like a main fucking force of like mind body healing and the mind and the body connection. And like my guy, Jim Prusak, is like a peon of Gabor Mate. Um, so I'm trying to learn more about him. He's Theo Vaughn. God damn it. He's so good. He's my medicine. And he has like such a wide range of people on his show.
Yeah,
It's so because he's gone through so much trauma. He had such an intense childhood, alcohol, cocaine addiction, and so he's just like a child who wants to just learn about everything, and he he's the best. So yeah, great episode.
it is really cool what you're saying. I feel like I'm in the same exact boat. It feels like as I learn more about all of these different things, Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, Nietzsche, now Gabor Mate, if I'm saying his name right, Like
Hmm.
all of these things seem to be coming into my world and finding me at the exact time that I needed them. And the more I dive into them and learn about them, then other people tell me to read these things and listen to this person. And it's such a beautiful adventure for someone who loves to learn like myself. And I know you do too.
Dude, I don't know if it's because we're more aware of it, like the reticular activators going off when you're aware of
Mm-hmm.
something, you start seeing it everywhere. But I think the world is having a sort of great awakening. And that's why I think it's amazing that we're at the vanguard of it. We are ushering it in just as much as anybody else by talking about this stuff. By me, this is why I brought up the suffering thing. Is I've been writing stories about just being home and Burning Man stuff, but then this week I had the flare up, and I'm like, I have to write about it. I'm not out of the woods, even though I post pictures of myself on Instagram, like working out and stuff. Like I'm still going through this, and I have to tell this part of my journey because it is making me who I am. And I got to share this quote from the podcast that you sent our squad. And do you know what it's called?
Yeah,
I,
the
I got it
podcast is
here.
called How Depression.
Facilitates self transformation by the
Thank you.
Academy of Ideas. So
Nailed it.
caught it just in the nick of time.
Teamwork.
Yep. And so in that podcast, which is all about depression, how it facilitates self transformation, as is in the title, but plug in any sort of suffering or anything that you're going through, and it's fucking amazing. So we will link that. But they mention this guy, Dr. James Davies, who's a psychotherapist and an author, including books such as The Importance of Suffering. And he says, when most people think about the future, they dream up ways that they might live happier lives. But notice this: when people remember the crucial events that formed them, they don't usually talk about happiness. It is usually the ordeals that seemed most significant. It is usually the ordeals that seem most significant. Most people shoot for happiness, but feel formed through suffering. And I heard that and I'm like, that is exactly why I have to write about what I'm going through, because I'm just leaving out too much of my story if I'm not. And I think, I have the image in my head that people want lighthearted stories on the weekend and whatever. But I don't know who's out there suffering and who needs the story about my pain and how it's formed me more than a lighthearted piece. You just don't know. And it's my duty to freaking write about this journey of healing pain and reconditioning my brain and understanding the mind body connection. It is my duty to not be afraid to share that stuff and to usher in this great awakening. And I don't think it's just me noticing it more, because Andrew Huberman's talking about mind body stuff more. Dio Vaughn's having on all these like people like Gabor Mate. It's everywhere. And I think it's also amazing. Like, I think the pendulum is really swinging away from just all the insane, political correctness and scared, just being scared over the last 20 years or whatever. I think we are just sick of it, and it's all happening together where it's like we just want to heal, We're sick of just pointing fingers and being on each other's throats. We just want to heal. And obviously it's difficult to fully see that when our political candidates are at each other's throats and not even, but it's like we have to get so bad before things can change. I think that's what's happening, and it's starting to change. All
I
that to
love that
say.
you are seeing it as your duty to share the full story, because I have struggled with the same thinking for sure. It's like, oh, I'm so positive, I'm optimistic. I don't want to talk about the bad stuff or speak to the pain. But then reflecting on my own journey, it was the negative stuff that hit the hardest. It was the brutally honest and depressing quote by Charles Bukowski about the 9 to 5 and how they never pay the slaves enough, just enough for them to keep coming back to work. That was the final straw that finally punched me in the face and helped me quit my job. At every
Mm-hmm.
point along my journey, the positive stuff helps, but it's always been the negative, honest, brutal truth that actually forces me to make a change. So even though it's uncomfortable to talk about and to share and to sit with, it is the most important stuff to be sharing. Sure, we
Mm-hmm.
want some positive, but we also want to hear about the negative. And that's what we talk about so much on the podcast is like, yeah, tell us about the success story, but let's hear about the time in the trenches. Let's hear about the self-doubt. Let's hear about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And I was digging into it, like in this article, it's gonna be my newsletter. Why do we suffer? Like, what is the point? And kind of just asking that and realizing it's because we don't all reach the highest mountains. We're not all going to be billionaires or the most successful or have the same experiences like highs, but everybody knows what it means to suffer, no matter who you are, in some capacity, because it's subjective. Like, you don't compare suffering. We all, just by having a getting your heart broken, you could have the deepest depression anyone could ever experience. Like, it's not objectively like what you reach, it's subjectively how low you go, and we all go into some dark depths in this life. So I think it's where we relate more than anything. We don't relate on those highs necessarily, we relate in the shadowed valleys, and we're all down there. And if I could help people manage that place a little bit more and rise out of that, I feel like that is definitely part of the purpose as a writer and part of the purpose of this pain. And so what, and also you have to put in effort to reach the highs, more or less, unless, I mean, luck's a part of it and stuff, but usually it takes determination, some skill, some character, some wisdom, some grit, and you'll get to where you want to go. But suffering is involuntary. It is usually what happens, unless you're you who takes on suffering voluntarily, who has over the years through exercise and stuff. It's usually involuntary, you know. You get hit with something that, and we're all gonna be hit with it at some point or another. And for me, it's been chronic pain. And so then you have two choices. If it's this involuntary thing, what are you gonna make of it? And another quote from that epic podcast. Give me 1 second. You desire to know the art of living, my friend. And this is by Henri Frédéric Amiel, the 19th century Swiss philosopher and poet. And he says, it is contained in one phrase: make use of suffering. So it's something that is bestowed upon us, suffering. We don't ask for it, but then we have two choices: to flounder in it, to let the darkness overcome us, or to make use of it. And that, like we said before with that other quote, that is where people feel formed. And I 1000% agree with that. That is what has formed me. It's not the insane experiences of my 20s, which have been fucking awesome. It's the chronic pain that has made me who I am. And I'll stop there for a sec.
Got to bring in my favorite quote: character, like a photograph, develops in the darkness.
Mm,
And this whole podcast that we'll link in the show notes about how depression can be a tool for self-transformation is super interesting to me because I have never experienced actual depression. I have definitely been close to it when I hated my job and was studying for the CFA and didn't like living in San Francisco. But my brain is unique in that it found a way to cope, which was having laugh attacks and finding everything hilarious to the point where I'd start crying at work because I was laughing so hard. But I really liked this podcast on depression because it brought in a lot of what Carl Jung talks about. And his view on depression was different than a lot of people's. It's that depression often foreshadows a rebirth of personality or a big change or a transformation. And that the worst thing to do when you're feeling depressed is try and numb it, try and get rid of it by taking antidepressants. He literally locked himself in a tower and tried to go as deep into his own depression and psyche as he could to see what was on the other side, because he viewed depression as teleological, which means there's a purpose or a goal from the depression. It's not etiological, where cause and effect, something bad happened to me, so now I'm depressed. It's like, no, this thing is here. My psyche is creating this for a reason. You have to go down into the depths and sit with it and wrestle with it to find that treasure. It's like what Joseph Campbell says, the cave you fear to enter most holds the treasure you seek. And that was just a completely new idea for me. I feel like I keep stumbling across new ideas and new ways of thinking about things that are so interesting. And Jung talks about how depression is common at transitionary points in life. Midlife is probably the most common we hear about, the midlife crisis. You start to question, what am I doing with my life? Because you realize, oh my gosh, it's halfway over, or it's more than halfway over. And that was really interesting from the podcast. And then also this piece around young men. And this was back in the 1900s, of him saying that young men are experiencing depression because Western civilization has gotten rid of these rites of passage. And rites of passage, the role of that was to transform the infantile ego of boys into the masculine potential of men. And without the external rite of passage held by the elders, the psyche is recognizing we need something to shift from boyhood to manhood. And so it's going to create it itself. It's going to create a depression, an ordeal, something you have to go through. And we've talked about this way long ago, but our 20s have been so much harder than we thought they would be. And no one ever really said it was going to be this hard, figuring out what you want to do with your life, who you want to be. But it's this necessary ordeal that I feel like you need to go through, at least me speaking for myself as a man, to shift from boyhood to manhood.
Where do I begin? So much to say on that. Yeah, dude. First of all, if you're going through a midlife crisis, just get a Ferrari. It will heal the
Fix everything.
wounds. It will fill the hole. It will
Yep.
fix everything.
60% of the time it works every time.
Every time. Exactly. So just get a Ferrari. Secondly, I'd like to say, yeah, 20s are difficult. You are you are thrust into the world for the first time without a plan, and you think things are supposed to go a certain way, but then there's so much that you don't expect. And for the first time, you have to take it upon yourself to question who the hell you actually are and what you want to do in life. And
Also,
man,
just
just
to interrupt for a second,
come on in.
20 to 25 and 25 to 30, like those need to be separated. Those feel like
True.
such different epochs, at least in my own life.
Yeah, you can. 20 to 25 is still partying. I mean, it's people party their whole lives, but like it's still kind of college vibes and
Yeah.
still friends with college friends and still just like, yeah, just keep coasting, doing this job that I don't really like, but we're just having fun. Then you're like, fuck, I'm like 26, 27. What am I doing? What do I want to do? I gotta fucking figure this out. And it takes change, and it takes maybe going to that silent place, the dark night of the soul, to really start questioning and to not numb it. And I 100%, yeah, what Jung was saying, that he had an epic quote to this woman who he like sent a message to, and he's like, if I were you, like I wouldn't be, I just paraphrase, like I wouldn't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out of this depression, pretty much. Go to the darkest depths you can possibly imagine, wrestle with the art, like the dark angel, let it break your rib, and like come out the other side like a changed fucking person. And because there is, there's a well inside of us of potential. And this is what I was writing about in the Why Do We Suffer article as well. It's like we have a well of potential within us. And until you're forced to dive into the darkest depths of it and see what lies at the bottom, you probably won't. Like, if your life is going pretty good, if you're relatively happy, if your things are going okay, what reason is there to dive into the darkest depths of yourself to figure out what treasure awaits you? It takes something very difficult, and that's usually involuntary suffering, to make you fucking dive in. This is the reason why I'm writing the article, is because I feel like I have to. Like, I'm literally on the floor writing because I can't sit in a chair about like what I'm experiencing, and that is the gold. It's like, it's not me just theorizing about it. It's me trying to understand why I'm in pain and what it's bringing out of me. And that is the treasure, I think, that they talk about. And so if whatever it is that you're going through, instead of numbing it, instead of acting like it's going to get better, it's just going to get worse, dive into it, sit with it. And this is the crux of healing mind body pain. And what I'm doing right now is to allow whatever you're feeling, to not numb it, to not run away from it, to not freeze and stop your life in the face of it, to not try to fight it. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years, is trying to push back and fight it, and that just creates more fear, more worry. To allow it in, allow in whatever you are feeling, allow it to flow through you, sit with it, feel it, question it, and face it. That is ultimately what it's all about, facing whatever you're experiencing. And you will get through it that way, but not through fighting it, not through running, not through numbing.
I'm laughing because I remember that quote in the podcast, and I think he said, "Wrestle with it and let it break your hip." It was
Break your
like the
hip.
weirdest, the
Yeah,
weirdest thing.
did I say rib?
Well, you did. I
Like,
mean, that makes more sense, but
like
wrestle with it and let it break your hip. It just
break your
sounds
hip.
so
Maybe she was like an elderly woman.
morbid and terrible. But I think you're totally right. You have to face it. And I've been thinking about recently, why is it so fun slash meaningful slash fulfilling to talk about the hard stuff? Again, like you said, when we reflect on our lives, it's not the happy moments that form us, it's the crucibles, it's the cauldrons that we find ourselves thrown into. And it's who we become in those hard moments that really forge character and belief. And it's really that belief in yourself. There's this quote that
Yeah.
I've been obsessed with recently. It's by Kim Gordon, and she says, "People pay to see other people believe in themselves."
Mm.
And I read that the first time, and then I read it a second time, and then I read it a third time, and then it really started to sink in. And think about that. Like, you pay money to go see someone who believes in themselves so much that they are on stage in front of thousands of people, or they're giving a speech, or whatever arena they're in. It's intoxicating to watch someone fully believe in themselves, because that's what we want. And it's not easy to form that self belief. Maybe it comes easy to some people, maybe they're born with it. But for a lot of people, it is putting in the reps and bombing and messing up and failing and going through all of those hard moments that build your self belief. And it's contagious. You want to see it, you want to be around it. And it makes me think of you. Like, you are going to be so confident in your ability to handle a flare up or handle some minor pain in the future, because you've gone through this chapter and you've built that irrefutable stack of proof that you are who you say you are, that you're someone who can overcome the pain.
Yeah, man. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it reminds me of when Brendan Backstrom was on the podcast, legend. Love the guy. And he's like, even though, I was trying to heal physically then, but it was all part of the same universe. He's like, this is the biggest G. You'll look back and see yourself right now as the biggest G that you've ever been. It's not when you're out of pain, pain free, and fit as a fiddle, or just crushing it. It's right now, or you're in the fucking throes of it, still dealing, still looking for answers, yet still smiling and still fucking doing the podcast and still living your life. That is because he's like, in my own life, that is the biggest G of Brendan, when I was just broken, yet I was persevering and I was just trying, looking for answers. And when we are in that dark night of the soul, that is when we're formed, and that is the proof of what we've been through that we'll look back on. And I refer to the article I'm writing again of why we suffer. It's not for anybody else. Like I'm like, Jesus, people probably think I'm just crazy or in denial, saying that it's my brain creating this pain when I could barely sit in this chair and my body's just like racked with fucking pain. If I, like, you're just, you're in denial. Like, your body's clearly broken and you're just breaking it further by going to the gym when your back is fucked. At least that's my own mind, thinking about what other people are thinking, which we
It's
tend
always
to
a good
do.
thing to be doing. Yeah. It's always right.
It's always right. But then I'm like, who the fuck cares? It's if I'm the only one who feels the pain, and I'm the only one who could get out of it, and I'm the only one who's then like, what's the point? It doesn't matter if people believe me. All that matters is who I'm becoming in this process. That is that's literally all that matters. That is the point of suffering. It's not to prove something or to prove that you've gone through something. It's who you become at the end of it. It's not, anyways.
Wait,
And
real quickly.
yeah, yeah.
One of my favorite sayings, I have no idea who said this. Might have been my old business partner, Tim. The goal of the goal is not the goal. The goal of the goal is the person you become along the way.
Mm,
And I have
exactly.
always loved that. Again, it's who you become. So important.
So that's why I'm like, it doesn't matter if people believe me or anything. I'm gonna keep writing about it because I know in my heart of hearts this is true. And Gabor Mate talking about this just validated more that I've had mind body symptoms since I was a little kid. I peed the bed till I was like 13, and so did Gabor Mate, and Theo Von did till he was like 26.
You're
They're mind
amongst
body
good company.
symptoms. Yeah, they're like there's things that our brain can literally do anything in our body to distract us from traumatic experiences that do derive from childhood. I definitely had childhood adversity, and just understanding them now, and that the brain can create anything in the body to really just as a proxy for that emotional pain, and to make us, if we're lucky, start to look at our emotions instead of what's physically going wrong. Because just as much as the brain can create the pain, it can make it go away. And all that to say, it's still going to take time, and flips are part of it. But also, one other tidbit is that, like, I want this to be over. Obviously, I want to be at the end so I could be like, oh, it was my brain. It worked. I did it. But what will that prove? Just that I was right, or just that? I mean, I guess that's it. Faith. Faith is not having the answer and still believing anyway, and that's why I got keep the faith tattooed on my arm, is because do this whole thing, and like you, I've never really been depressed. I've never like spiraled into just a darkness like that. Somehow I've always stayed positive and like just kept. I've cried a lot, I've broken down a lot. I just kept going because I could not accept that this is how the story ends, and still on the journey. But for some insane reason, I've kept the faith, and that's what we have to do. I, like I said before, with suffering, we got two options: to let the darkness overwhelm us, or to dig deep into the recesses of our soul and pull out the gold that lies within. I think that is why we're on earth. It's not just experience the good, but to reach our full potential. And that is through going through difficult shit and through keeping our faith in the midst of it.
Yeah. There's this graph that I've been sharing with a lot of people recently that talks about your life. And I feel like maybe I said this on a recent episode, but how you think your life will go, just up and to the right, linear, versus reality, where it's just chaos.
Yeah,
And there's loop de loops bringing you back. There's monsters in the middle that eat you. And
sure is.
what's so interesting about suffering and bad things happening is that the same thing can happen to two people, and the meaning you give that thing is the differentiator between whether you're okay or whether you're not, whether you can use it or whether it uses you and puts you in the dirt.
Destroys you.
Because we all have the choice. We don't get to decide what happens to us in life, but we do get to decide what meaning we give it. And that's why I'm so interested in Adlerian psychology and Jung and just what all of these people are saying about these inevitable human experiences that we're going to go through: death,
Mm-hmm.
grief, loss, and how you navigate those and don't let it break you. Because for you, it's been a pattern of the breakdown, but then you're always back. You're always hopeful within like 24 hours. And I love that so much about you. You just bounce back. Nothing can keep you down for too long.
Thanks, pal. Yeah. Yeah. I think, like you said, it's that defines our lives, how we react to what we can't control. Because there's so much that we can't control, pretty much everything. And we could go our whole lives trying to control things by trying to stay safe. But that's not gonna work. You're never safe. No matter how comfortable you try to make your life, no matter how less risk averse you try to be, that is a life deprived of richness and meaning. That's the thing. In our suffering is the meaning that we crave. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and seek suffering. It just means that at some point or another, it's probably going to happen. And how you handle it, how you get through it, how it brings you closer to others, that is the meaning of our lives. That is why we're here. And the beautiful thing about suffering is that it makes the miracle of life so much more poignant. It makes sitting in a park for me pain free, which honestly I have not experienced very often over the last 6 years, but I've had my moments, pretty fucking awesome. I could just sit there and not feel anything. And I think you know that I could just sit and be quite happy because I know what it feels like to sit and be in a lot of pain. And it makes an ordinary day miraculous, you know, when nothing has to happen, but you're alive and you're not dealing with what you were dealing before. Jordan Peterson talks about this on Lex Friedman episode. He went through 3 years of agonizing pain. And I don't, do you know why?
Jordan Peterson,
Do you know why? Yeah. What was he
dude, I
like? It
mean,
was just
he had
crazy
some
shit.
crazy, gnarly stuff happen to him. He almost
Yeah.
died in a hospital in Russia
Yeah.
during
I think for
COVID
starters.
because he was
Yeah.
addicted to pain something.
Yeah. It wasn't good. Um, and he talks about this. He was like in a pharmacy towards the end of this, of his 3 year odyssey, and he's just standing there, and it's taking a while, but maybe in the past he would have gotten angsty or fed up, but he's like, I could just stand here and I'm not on fire, and I could stand here for the rest of my life and it'll be okay. And it just made him realize, and I've had so many of those moments where I'm just like standing in a line and I'm just like, this is pretty chill, you know? I don't have to be in a rush right now. There's nothing I have to do. I can just stand here. I'm not in pain. And that is a miracle. So it makes you just realize how good life is when we go through the difficulties.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes we need it.
Sometimes you need that perspective to
Yeah,
shake things up.
that's what it is.
And then I also think one thing I was thinking about while you were speaking, I wasn't listening to anything you were saying. I was just thinking about what can I say next that's going to be better.
Make me sound super smart.
My boy, he's smart.
It's
Um,
wicked smart.
Wicked smart. There we go. Thank you. It was, and again, I was like, I'm hesitant to say it because I have had a pretty hashtag blessed life, and it's really the distinction between the voluntary suffering had a ton. I put myself through that, but the involuntary suffering is the hardest part because you can't control it. But if we're
However, I'd
speaking
like
about
to. You've had a lot of mental suffering,
a
formidable foe is your own mind, just trying to just
real
grappling with
real
shit.
basket case.
You're fucking nuts, buddy. Just gonna
That
put it
is
out in
true.
plain and simple.
That is true. I have spent a lot of mental energy fighting
Mm.
myself in my own head. Yeah. I mean, my inner critic seems to have calmed down recently, but he
Yeah,
is
you're
a
doing
real
great now.
bastard. He's a real bastard, and he's definitely caused a lot of suffering that felt involuntary across the years. So thank you for that. But what I was going
Sure.
to say about it all is that you can, at least for me, this always works for me. And again, it goes back to when I was the closest to being clinically depressed, it was the humor, it was the levity. For me, it's so effective no matter how dark things get. Bring in some dark humor. See if you can make a funny joke about it all or laugh it off. Or if it's really bad, try and again, this is going to make me sound crazy, but see like how bad you can make it from a humorous perspective. I've done that in the past when everything sucks and I'm having zero fun. I will intentionally try and make things a little bit worse to have a small 1% benefit. Just like go all in on the suck and just accept that that's the chapter right now. Instead of trying to be like, oh, I wish things were better. I wish things were
Mm-hmm.
better. Like just accept that everything
Lean
is
in.
terrible right now.
Yeah, dude. Lean in. That's part of mind body healing. That's part of, I mean, just embracing suffering. And like the Carl Jung stuff, it's don't try to accept what is, surrender to what is, and lean into what is. And that will make it laugh at the absurdity of life. That is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to really focus on. It's like, this is so absurd that I'm experiencing this, that I'm going through this, that my body feels fucked. I'm just like, no, it's your brain. You're going to get through it. There's nothing wrong with you, which I know is the truth, but it's absurd. It's a crazy situation. And I can't help but just laugh at it and be like, it is what it is. Lean into the pain. Fucking, you've dealt with it so many times. It's no different. You're gonna get through it. You can't stop living your life. Laugh about it. I write about this in the article. It's like, that is what has got me through. Every time that I've broken down with you, crying, what happens at the end? Laugh.
We laugh
Laugh a
it out.
bunch. We laugh it out. It's all the same thing. It's all release.
Mm-hmm.
I say that Theo Vaughn is my medicine because he's so damn funny. That has got me through my darkest moments. I've had some pretty good ones, and that is it's healing. And I gotta believe it's why we're here. If we're gonna suffer, laughter is love, and you can't have one without the other. The
Live,
darkness and
laugh,
the
love.
light.
Did you just try and work that into the episode?
Did it slip in unnoticed? Do it. Live, laugh, love, baby. Is that what it says behind you?
It's the recipe. Yes, that is the artwork on my wall. Live, laugh, love. So,
Or your local Target.
is there anywhere else we need to go with this beautiful episode today?
Well, we could tie. So we did the Dark Night of the Soul. Um, Another topic I had. It's not really. Is just the quote by John Steinbeck. Now that you don't
No.
have to be
Oh boy.
perfect, you can.
Not the quote by John Steinbeck.
Nobody wants that. Oh, John. Maybe we'll
Bring
save
it
it for
in.
another date.
No,
Bring
no,
it
no.
in.
Bring it
Okay.
in, please.
All right. All right. Now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. I say that because I'm working on some things right now. I'm starting my magazine. Maybe I talked about before, and I'm like, just fucking do it. And it's awesome. I'm starting it. I'm just gonna keep it simple to start. And a few articles, photography, just like creating a physical, beautiful thing. It's already pretty damn fun to see everything that I post online digitally, like in a, I could see the full spread online. And how I'm doing it, and this is how I write my articles, it doesn't have to be perfect to start. And it's definitely not going to be perfect by the time it ends, but we're so afraid to start things, to make changes, do anything because we think it has to be the answer. It has to be as good as it could possibly be right out of the gates. What I'm doing, I'm just like, everything that I do right now is going to be iterated. So just throw the clay on the wheel, throw the spaghetti at the wall, so to speak, and you will change it. But you can't change what you don't have. So put it down, keep working, and just keep whittling away. And just, you don't have to be perfect. This is, as any sort of creative imperative for my writing, for the books, you have to start with something and just take the pressure off that it has to be perfect and just fucking start the thing and just start going. It helps so much.
Just get started already. Damn
Just
it.
start. Just
So,
start.
I'm actually really glad you said that because that was
Oh,
the
good.
last piece I wanted to bring in and it ties in perfectly. It
Wow.
is this thought I've been having And YouTube comes up as the example because everyone wants to be a YouTube creator. But there's
Mm,
that fear of, oh, what if I spend all this time making YouTube videos and it never goes anywhere? And I want to do research on this. I'm going to hire a team of analysts and they're going to do this research. I actually don't think it's possible to be unsuccessful if you start and stick with one thing for a long enough time
for your
horizon.
entire life
Like,
and your
think
next
about it.
life.
If you decide you want to be a YouTube creator and you make YouTube videos every week or every month for the rest of your life, I actually don't think you can be unsuccessful because you'll learn so much along the way. The reason most people are unsuccessful with becoming a big podcaster or a YouTuber or an artist or a writer is that they give up. They give up, they pivot, they don't do something. I really think that the whole you're going to waste all of this time doing something and it's not going to pay off is a fallacy that
Yeah,
we create to not get started because there's just no way you could do something for that long and not get good at it and not learn and not have some of the random success that comes when you're consistently taking action. It's just something I've been thinking about because as a coach, as a writer, as a podcaster, and now getting into speaking, I feel like if I do it long enough, it has to happen.
it has to.
Like there's no way it's not going to work out if I just never give up. And that feels good. That feels very amazing and controllable. It feels amazing because it is controllable. Like that's the only
Hmm.
thing that I can control is just showing up and not getting scared and changing lanes and trying something else. Just sticking with it.
Dude, that is what it's been my solace, I would say, just on my writing journey is like I see these people who have thousands of claps or whatever. Doesn't matter, but and I'm like, I'm doing this long enough. If I keep trying other things, if I try TikTok, like I don't want to do that. I'm not gonna try it just for the chance that I'll get a viral video and just be like, okay, that's cool. Now what? I'm gonna stick to the thing that I actually enjoy and stick it out for a long time. And that I think is a better plan than trying to find the right thing at the right time and just luckily hit it. We see all the I'm just speaking from like Medium. I see all the top articles on like the front page that have thousands of claps and stuff. And I'm like, I you know, I know these people. They comment on my stuff and like why are they blowing up? I'm just seeing like the highlight reel of the greatest hits of the week. I'm not seeing the 5 articles they wrote that like didn't get any claps.
Yep.
Like many of mine, they go into the void. But I say all that because the process of doing the thing itself is what is the point. That is what sustains you. And that relates to the suffering because that is what's got me through this. It's laughter, it's friends, but it's having this thing that I could always fall back on to get me through, which is writing. If I write about the experiences, and that's why I had to write this story about this last flare up because it helps me through it. 1000% helps me get through the pain to write about it and understand it and express myself. And I don't care if it goes viral or anything. The joy and the journey of writing itself is what has actually sustained me over the years of dealing with this. And maybe that's why I haven't gotten into depression, is because I've had something that I believe in, something that I love to do, that I've continually worked on without deviation. And it is only a matter of time. And things are changing. And it's actually insane. Like, I got a literary agent who says he's very confident we're going to get the second book published. Like, I'm just like, good God. I could
Let's
not have,
go.
I did not think this possible like 6 months ago. And like, it's actually happening. And just realizing that if you're going to do the thing, pick something you want to do. Don't pick something that is you think is what's trending now or what people are doing. You got to fucking follow the thing that lights you up, that makes you happy, that will sustain you through that lonely season. And that is what's going to give your life meaning despite the highs and lows, which we all will go through Find the thing. It could be just be helping people. It's like it doesn't have to be this creative pursuit, but find something creative because that is really an expression of your soul, and I think that is what turns the darkness into light. Really is expression and creativity, and it could be for no one but you, but the world needs it too. Dr. Seuss over here. Uh, yeah,
That's it. That's the recipe. That's the cheat code. Find what you would do for free because you love it so much, and then do it long enough and frequently enough that eventually you're going to get paid for it because you get good at it. And it's
it could take decades, but you will enjoy the process more than selling your soul and doing something that you don't want to be doing, even if it ticks the boxes, you know?
That's it. I think we need to end because I'm suffering over here. There's this little fly. It's just all up in my business. Talk about hard
Oh boy.
things that I'm going through.
Champ, champ, champ. Sounds good, brother. You got anything else to land this plane? That
I
should
think
do
that's
it.
it. I
That
think
should do
we
it.
will end where we started, which is
Mm,
just get started
always a good
already,
place.
please. You said something
Start to
actually
think.
about that was really powerful. Is that you can't
Here we
I
go.
can't remember how you said it. It was beautiful, surprisingly beautiful. The
Shocking.
You can't learn unless you're doing it, or you can't iterate unless you're doing
You
it.
have
You have
nothing
to
to
have
work. Yeah, you have nothing to work with unless you got
yes,
no clay unless you throw it on the wheel. You
exactly.
got no marble unless you have a marble. You got
Get
no
out the
David unless
chisel.
you start with the marble, sort of thing.
It's
You get
true.
it.
It's true. Well, it's great to see you, my friend. Love these
Wish I could
episodes
see the same.
together. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us today. We love you guys so much, and you are the reason we are still doing this.
Mm,
That's
love
actually a
y'all.
lie. We'd be doing it if you weren't here because we love it so much. But thank you for being
Exactly.
here. Anyways,
And if this show makes you think, laugh, cry, smile, urinate, anything at all, give it a give it a review. Give it 5 stars if that's what you think it deserves. Helps us a lot, and I think saying this is actually encouraging people to do it. So let's keep saying it. Let's get this show into more people's earlobes. Know what I mean? Love you guys.
peace.